Hey everyone, and welcome to the pilot video for the Nordic Sound's second channel dedicated to album reviews and new music. If you hear from the main channel, the reason for this is so the long-form interviews for the podcast and these shorter album reviews can stop cannibalizing one another. But if you're completely new to the Nordic Sound because this video just popped up in your recommended feed, welcome to this little corner of the internet where you can come to learn about Nordic music and stay up to date on the Nordic music scene. So, without further ado, let's talk about Oslo Sweethearts Mio and their latest album, Hva Nå. So after much anticipation riding off their debut hit Ingen Tid og Miste, the Oslo underground heartthrobs of Mio are finally back with their sophomore album, Hva Nå. Considering the high expectations and pressures coming off of such a successful debut as theirs, there could not be a more apt name for this record, translating to What Now? As you all know, Ingen Tid og Miste earned the top spot in my 2023 top 10 list, but I was just one of many who felt so strongly about it. The Witches of Mio were, in fact, spellbinding the hearts of listeners and fans the world over with their truly individual, free-spirited sound. Now, all these years later, I still stand by what I've said before. Not only does Mio weave a musical experience like no other, but their electrifying live performances put them in a league of their own. Between the quality of the record itself and their growing reputation for spirited, energetic live performances, Mio's 2023 debut was nothing short of an absolute success, especially by underground standards. And this was further solidified by their 2025 signing to Hva Nå. But there is a caveat. For any band to have a debut as successful as Mio's can be a blessing as well as a curse. A blessing in the obvious case that any band would dream of having a debut as successful as Mio's was, and it was very much deserved, but it can be a curse, though, in that it sets up a unique pressure and set of expectations for how they follow up and through on that success. A pressure that I wouldn't wish on my greatest enemy and that I certainly wouldn't want for myself. But that's the music business, and I've been wondering how these musicians were going to tackle this inevitable challenge. Ingen Tid og Miste had the benefit of being without precedent, right? But you can only pull that off once. And the sophomore album is the arena in which a band like Mio needs to buckle in and put in the work needed to follow through under the weight of a whole new set of expectations. And with these realities of the sophomore album in mind, I've been curious, if not a bit wary, of what happens when that novelty inevitably wears off. Would they conjure up a second record that stands on its own legs, or would they always be striving for and not quite reaching the heights of their inaugural album? These are the questions Hva Nå needs to answer when we finally sit down and hit play. With the title track, the record begins with something completely different from the last, a bass solo. Mariana's bass contradicts the gentle opening of the last album here with a snarling bass riff supported by Eilif's drums, Maya's fiddle, and Henny's synth to musically depict that very build-up, the anticipation of waiting to see what they're going to do, how they're going to follow up on the success of Ingen Tid og Miste. That musical depiction of anticipation was palpable, and I found myself it feels like you're being winked at, like they know what they're doing. And that's also the sense of humor and the spirit that we've come to know and love from Mio. But then this intro resolves into a fiddle riff from Maya, reminding us that this is indeed a folk rock band, before giving away to Mio's secret weapon, Dionysia Fjällvalen. So I won't stand on ceremony here. Dio is a monster of a vocalist. Not only does she have the chops, the versatility, the stage presence, I'm starting to suspect a deal with the devil or a troll is at play here, but she also has character. For many, myself included, Dio is Mio's binding agent. And in this record, with so little studio magic standing between you and her voice, the power is on full, confident display from the first breath to the last. But don't be mistaken, because an acrobatic vocalist like Dio cannot stick the landing without a reliable, rock-solid rhythm section to support everything, no matter how talented the vocalist. In other words, the rhythm section's foundation is what gives a singer like Dio the freedom needed to thrive. This synergy and mutual trust is what makes Mio and bands like them work so well. If you have a talented vocalist, but the band doesn't really back it up, it falls flat. Likewise, a great band can... Well, Bob Dylan kind of turns this on its head, but you know what I mean. That synergy is really needed for both to be worth more than the sum of their parts, essentially. What becomes more clear as the album goes on is a clear step up in songwriting from the last record. The verses, bridges, and choruses are all more fluid, with the instrumental parts more finely woven in between. The lyrics come naturally with the melodies, as if the two are inextricably linked with one another, calling to mind the same way that Lindy Faihela's lyrics and melody mingle as one with her work with Dave Varna. This is most apparent in Kanka Se for Mai, the track that I played at the beginning of the review, the chorus of which still sticks to me as one of the highlights of the record. The music simply flows. But there's also playfulness, evident from the last album, which is more central to the songs themselves this time around, with Dio often feeling as if she's playing the band on marionette strings with her voice, a really hard dynamic to pull off with such a large band. Kanka Se for Mai again shows one of the best examples of this, about halfway through the track with the lyrics Devo Baraha or Barata. The staccato on the repeated never fails to bring a smile to my face, and on the first time I listened, I found myself just going, nice. And that's sort of the response that you want out of your listener, is just to be genuinely impressed, right? I've been using Kanka Se for Mai as the exemplary track for much of this conversation so far, but these are aspects of the songwriting and performance that do carry throughout the entirety of Hva Nå. With the intermezzo De Varen Gang, the album takes an unexpected turn towards a more aggressive, punk attitude introduced by Dio's story of selling her soul to Satan. She told the same story at Midgårdsblot 2023, and it was that exact moment when she donned a set of devil horns while telling the story that she fully won over the crowd. So if the first half of the record carries echoes of Ingen Tid og Miste, the second half fully embraces that folk rock and punk side of their style that reminds us of their roots in Oslo's Blitz scene, while also showing some promising paths outward stylistically from their already eclectic and diverse sound. So credit must also be given to the dedication that Mio shows to the folk aspects of their sound. Rather than just peppering in some token fiddle here and there and calling it folk rock like so many bands do, the inspiration from the tradition shows in the textual references as well as the musical. Gamle Erik is a beloved... Would beloved be the word? A character of Norwegian folklore, as can also be said for the track Nøkken. On the Gamle Erik track, Mariana again translates the ultra-Norwegian sound of the droning Lydian gesture typical of the Hardanger fiddle to the electric bass to set the groove for the tune. Then, Det er meg det samme for jeg havner når jeg dør, and Busan Lull are themselves deep cuts from traditional Norwegian repertoire as well, with the latter half given this heavy doom metal flair led by Maya's fiddle and Henny picking up the horns. So this last half of the album can be summarized pretty much by taking a book of Asbjørnsen and Moe's Norwegian fairy tales and just slapping a fuzz pedal on it, and I am absolutely here for that. But as all great things must come to an end, the album ends on an intimate DIY note for Hva Nå, which feels like an homage to their roots in the punk scene. It has very much a live studio recording feel, with all of the open-air sounds of all the hot mics going at once, even picking up the clicks of the pedals and the shuffling in the chairs. It does truly feel like you're in the room with them, with the fourth wall coming down, so to speak, to invite you, the listener, into their space at the very end, almost as a little reminder that they're just a bunch of musicians making music together. It was a memorable and charming way to sing out the album, a feeling that sticks with you long after the record stops spinning. So I opened this review with talking about the relationship this album would have with the expectations and pressures presented in following up their debut album Ingen Tid Miste, especially in my case, giving that album the #1 spot in my 2023 album list. So for me, even, a lot of expectations are high. But as the anticipation settled and I got a few minutes into the opening track, those expectations gave way to something more realistic. The joy and privilege of just hearing a group of young musicians with such talent and spirit come together to make something beautiful, genuine, and raw. It only took a couple of tracks for me to realize what might seem obvious to you, dear viewer, that I was going into this album with kind of the wrong attitude, that of comparison. But without getting too existential, it's kind of like getting older, right? When nostalgia keeps us from appreciating the present for what it is, as we constantly compare everything to the past with those rose-tinted, stubborn glasses. So how does Hva Nå stand up to those questions? It rejects them. It doesn't need to prove anything because Mio already has. If this was their debut album instead, it would have left just as powerful of an impression on me. The impression that there is a band of punks from Oslo that weave a musical experience unlike any other in a time where just so much music sounds the same. The impression that each and every member of Mio can bring so much of their own soul and expression to a record, but at the same time work as one band towards a coherent artistic vision. And when that novelty wears off, and wear off it will, like it does for any other band, what's left standing is even better. It's something real. With this record, Mio has shown that they will not just be a flash in the pan, a one-trick pony, a one-hit wonder. When push comes to shove, they put their heads down, they put the work in, and that's the sign of a passionate, dedicated group of musicians. Between Ingen Tid Miste and Hva Nå, Mio has somehow managed to pull off two solid albums that only complement one another in a way that eludes exact explanation. Just as on the debut record, each and every track stands on its own, while together weaving a captivating journey through moods, textures, and styles. With Hva Nå, Mio continues to show the world that they have something special, something magic, that just cannot be captured in an album review. You're just going to have to listen to it for yourself. Thank you for watching, and I hope you check out Mio's new record. Take care. Okay, for longtime followers of the Nordic Sound, let it be said that Cricket behaved through this whole video. I actually think he's asleep. Huh? You there, buddy? Yep. He barely made a peep. He's loud in the videos when he doesn't talk. Isn't that right?